Welcome to Stout for Christ, a radio ministry of Stout Memorial United Methodist Church in Parkersburg, West Virginia, with our host, Sarah Sisson.
I'm Sarah Sisson, host of Stout for Christ, and we're glad you're listening to our radio show today. Stout for Christ is a ministry of Stout Memorial United Methodist Church located at 3329 Broad Street in Parkersburg, West Virginia. We invite you to become a member of our Stout Church family. We offer 2 worship services each Sunday, a contemporary worship service at 8:45 and a traditional worship just following this broadcast at 10:45. If you can't join us in person, our services are broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube. Stout for Christ is a ministry meant to help us navigate life and learn more about God's love for all people. Today our topic is Do No Harm, and here to help us learn more about this subject is Pastor Helen Oates. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, Sarah. It's good to be back again and to share with our radio audience and come and share what really are 3 important phrases that we'll be going through the next 3 Sunday mornings with, in terms of do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. These phrases actually are John Wesley phrases, but in 2015, Reuben Job wrote a book about the 3 simple rules. And not only did he say the 3 simple rules, but he added the phrase, that can change the world. And so when I think about, what is it that we as Christians, how is it that we really want to live out our lives? I thought these simple rules was a way in which to get at that question of, if we're evaluating, like during Advent, taking time to reflect, that these rules will help us be a path in which we can use to do some self-reflection.
Absolutely, and you're right. It's a simple 3-step process and definitely some words to live by. So how can we see this play out in what's happening today?
Well, our first is do no harm. And it seems like, for the last 40-some days, we've been seeing people who have been harmed because of SNAP benefits being frozen, harmed because of jobs being frozen, employment being frozen. So, as we are in the midst of all of that, and we know that we're now at that stage of trying to come out, that the government has opened back up, but we know the discussions will continue once again, and especially at the end of January. But how we look at ourselves as a society, and to look at some of the things that are ongoing. We see those raids where ICE is arresting individuals, and then we begin to hear stories about how people been taken from their workplaces, even ICE watching out at schools and other kinds of places. But it is, as we know, it's a very sensitive subject, and yet we see harm being done. I had a glimpse as we saw soldiers going to the cities, some of our cities, Washington, D.C. and other places, and it seemed like it was branded as to be peacekeepers, but instead what I saw was it was to move homeless out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. One of the persons who's connected to West Virginia as Terry Bradshaw, not the football player, but Terry Bradfield, I'm sorry. But Terry has served this country as a military chaplain, and he, rose in rank, and I've just been kind of following some of his Facebook posts because, I trust what Terry says. And if anyone else wants to look up some of his Facebook posts, but, he expressed a real concern that our commander-in-chief would make such comments to other generals in a room. So, things just, we can feel it. Things just aren't going the way that we would like them to go. We see harm being done over and over again.
Kind of makes me think of a song that talks about what the world needs now is love, sweet love, but the world also is in need of a little bit of change.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what, when Reuben put this together, using these three phrases as a way for us as Christians to be the change agent. That's what he threw out there to a conference on youth back in 2015 as every youth received this book on the 3 simple rules. But it was a challenge to be able to put out there and say, we are the ones who are to walk the walk. We are the ones who are to be these change agents for our world. We want our world better. We want our world to be different. Then we have to be different as well.
Be the change you wish to see in the world.
Exactly. And, so it begins, his 3 items begin with do no harm. And, my granddaughter the other day was taken with a woolly worm that was crawling across the concrete. And she said, well, do we step on it? I said, no. Woolly worms won't hurt us. And so then we began to talk about how some think that the woolly worms help to predict our seasons.
Oh, yes.
but yeah, so when we look at that range in terms of whether we step on a woolly worm or we commit a serious crime, when we talk about do no harm, we can go in a lot of different tangents with that. But for today, I'd like for us to look at 2 in particular. One is to do no harm to self. Jesus preached that we are to love one another as we love ourselves. And, if we cannot love ourselves, then we're not going to be able to love others. So we do no harm to self, whether that means, whether we're caught up in some kind of addiction, whether we have anger, we fly off the handle way too fast with our spouse and our children, even kicking the dog, whether it's those kinds of things, but that we do no harm. Each one of us are cherished children of God. And each one of us has special gifts and graces to share. Each one of us is capable of loving the way in which God, in turn, loves us. So, do no harm, number 1. Do no harm to self. And we know that there are times in which we take glances at the mirror as we walk by. But when we are able to say to that mirror, that mirrored image, I love you, I don't think we do that very often. We look and we see wrinkles, or we take quick glances to make sure the hair isn't flying every which way, but we seldom ponder that gaze very long, because we begin to pick at our own faults, and we see the blemishes, whether they're actually there or what we see from within ourselves. But we first have to start by doing no harm to ourselves. And that means loving ourselves, being good to ourselves, making sure we, eat appropriately, making sure that we are engaged with others so that we can, know that we have some friends to rely on, so that we can find our best self as we love ourselves. There was several weeks ago, a time when Vandy students, those who had gone to Van Deventer, junior high it was at that time, but could go back and kind of walk the halls and reflect, since that area is going to be dramatically different. My kids, my older two, were some of those that gathered, and later on my daughter said to me that she had an eerie feeling when she walked the halls and went up the stair steps to the second floor. She said she remembered, it made her remember that was the place that she began cutting herself. We moved as pastors. We moved from one area to another. Kids didn't know, didn't know the community as well as other students, and so we're trying to fit in. But that was a pain that she had with herself that I had no clue about. So, she told me how. In junior high, well, we know junior high is tough, that she enjoyed track to start with, but when the guys would call out, "Run, monkey, run," she stopped, because she was of a mixed race, and So we want to do no harm in terms to ourselves and in terms to others. I remember my grandson talking about when we lived in another community that I thought it would be a program that he would enjoy, because in the afternoons they would go to the city pool and have, just I thought would be a wonderful time. He only did that once, and each time after he kept saying no, he didn't want to go. No, he didn't want to go. It took all summer before I finally learned what the issue was. And it was simply, the teacher gave sunscreen to one student and told him to go around giving it to the other students. And he came to my grandson, who's biracial, and my grandson said to him, "Oh, you don't need this." And, so passed him by, kind of thing. So, those kinds of things that occur that do harm, that hurts the spirits of our children, our youth around us. So not only do we not want to do harm to ourselves, but we don't want to harm others. We don't want to harm others, whether it's in a word or a joke or, other kinds of things.
our words have power in both of those scenarios. You mentioned earlier about looking in the mirror and just having a hard time, sometimes even coming up with something nice to say to ourselves privately. But I've recently seen a trend where this new generation of parents are, setting their kids down, in front of the mirror when they're getting them ready for school or whatever in the morning, and they're going through some of those positive affirmations. I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm beautiful, and I've just loved seeing that trend. But so our words have power with ourselves as much as they do with others. They
do. And with ourselves and our children, and our children, it makes a difference. So when we also talk about do no harm to others, it's simply, we know when we do that. We know when, whether it's to go into a little mom and pop store and take things off the shelf and leave without paying, or whether it's, we've seen these episodes on television of bank robberies and jewelry store robberies. All of those kinds of things do harm. We think, someone has plenty of money, they have insurance, they're not going to feel this hit to their finances. But everything trickles down. Everything what we do to another has an effect on us because we are interconnected. I had an experience the other day of going through the drive-through at the Vienna McDonald's, and as is often my case, I order and then I go fumbling in my purse to find the money. And I like to give exact change, so I'm one of those that will keep digging until I find it. And I'm sure I do make as it was evident the day that I went through McDonald's, I make others aggravated. So I order, then I scoot up a little bit, and as I got my change, I let my foot off the brake, car was going forward, and then I heard this loud beeping sound, this horn, and realized then that there was someone on the outer side of the drive-through there at McDonald's. And I backed up and said, motion, go ahead. But she then paid for my tea as I went up to the window, and the girl there said, she said, she must have been feeling guilty. But anyway, whether it was out of that or whether it was a sense of deciding, okay, now I'm going to do good, we have those opportunities where we can do good. Another place that we have problems in this do no harm is simply the way we do drive. We get mad at someone and we go up and ride the tail of their car. We don't drive with caution when we let our emotions become more prevalent than thinking how we should be acting and driving. So this, road rage of throwing hand signals out the window and this kind of stuff, that is doing harm. And we need to change that kind of behavior in order to change the world. We have a prevalence of language that is language, as they say, the way a sailor cusses. But it is that which, we need to have a gentler way in which to talk to one another. I heard an old folk tale that came out of the Jewish tradition of a wise man who lived way up on a mountain, and others would seek his wisdom and would climb the mountain. And so this individual did climb the mountain, sat with the wise man, and then the wise man gave him some instruction to do. And he was to go back to his home and find a feather pillow, and then go out to the hillside and open up the pillow and let the feathers go. And it came at a time when the wind blew and the feathers flew everywhere. He completed his task and went back to the wise man saying, I did this, but I don't understand what it's supposed to mean. And then the wise man said to him, now go back down the mountain and gather up all those feathers. So, if we could just think of our words as being those feathers, once they fly out of our mouths, it's hard to pull them back in. It's hard to come back. Unless we're real good friends with someone, it's hard to come back from saying such hurtful words.
It gets easier and easier to do, through social media too. When you don't see the face and you don't necessarily see the immediate reaction of what your words do mean to somebody.
Right. And on social media, how we can just kind of vomit it all out there. And it does harm. It does harm.
Sometimes it's you might be replying to a complete stranger, but people in your lives also see those comments too. So you may not think about that action as well. But there's also a lot of ways we can use social media for good, and I think we've seen that play out recently. There have been a lot of hungry people as of lately, and I've seen so much locally and within our state of just everyday people stepping up to do what they can.
Right. And that's what our next week's session is on, doing good. How we decide to do no harm to ourselves or to others. And then we pick up on, what do we do? What do our actions and our words mean? It means that we then need to do good. We want... when we think about doing no harm, sometimes it means that we have to take the blinders off of our eyes so that we can see a larger view. Lazarus was one of those biblical characters, a beggar who stayed at the gate of a rich man. And, in those lifespans, the rich man never took an opportunity to help. Lazarus. And so when death came, the rich man saw Lazarus. When the rich man was in the fires of hell, he saw Lazarus on the bosom of Abraham, and ask Father Abraham to send Lazarus to him so he might have a dip of cold water on his tongue, and if that wasn't allowed, for him to send Lazarus to his brothers so they could hear of that dreadful place of flames and change their ways. But Father Abraham said, there have been prophets, even the Son of God that would come. It isn't that people don't know; it's that they ignore, and so that we don't ignore what goes on, what we see around us. So we do have to have our eyes and our hearts wide open.
Absolutely. So it's a quick reminder, do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. That was a great discussion, Helen, and I know that there is someone listening today whose life is touched by your wise words of hope in Christ and love for us all. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Sarah.
If you were blessed by this program today and want to know more about how you can become part of the Stout Memorial United Methodist family, tune in to Stout Memorial's Facebook Live worship broadcast just after this program at 10:45 a.m. Send an email to stoutmemorial@gmail.com or attend a worship service in person at 8:45 and 10:45 each Sunday morning. This has been Stout for Christ, a radio ministry of Stout Memorial United Methodist Church, Parkersburg, West Virginia.